Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 311th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. Last episode 310, I spoke about are you using data or spying? The dangerous misuse of people analytics. If you listened to the episode, what did you think? Did any of it resonate with you? Let me know via the details at the end of the show. For the last year, the podcast has been fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 6 years worth of episodes to listen to. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at diverseminds.co.uk/downloads. Now, this week, as with every week, we have seen AI in the news, and I think you have done very well if you've avoided it. Primarily, the story were two key stories. One story about books being completely ripped up, scanned, and used for AI training. There's been a big legal case with 2 AI firms. And then the material, the book, the leftover material, the paper and the books being put in recycling bins, and how painful that's been for many people. And the second story is around AI and the cooling mechanisms the mechanisms used to cool the AI server centers and the data centers is cooled with treatable drinking water, i.e. drinking water that should be used for drinking, alongside with lots of stories of where AI data centers are being held the poor quality of drinking water for the local residents. So this is a very interesting time, I think, of this podcast, because AI in HR specifically, are we automating bias into HR processes? The other thing I've heard from lots of people desperately trying to find jobs, there's lots of redundancies in the UK at the moment, is saying, I just feel really stuck. And in fact, I'm being interviewed by AI. I'm not being able to get to interview. I don't know how things are being screened. And I think it's quite problematic, actually. And personally, I'm very, very anti-AI. So I have to accept, I guess, that it's being used, but I think it's very dangerous in lots of ways. And AI, I'm told, is supposedly transforming HR from recruitment, hiring, performance evaluations, and employee engagement. But as organizations embrace these tools, we really do have to ask, are we intentionally or unintentionally baking in the very biases we're trying to eliminate, or we were trying to eliminate, I should say. And so how is AI being used in HR processes to date? And some of these might be familiar to, and there might also be other ways that I'm not aware of. So again, if there's something I've missed out, do get in touch, because I'd love to know how. So there's machine learning. So that's identifying patterns in large data sets, such as predicting maybe the turnover of staff. It might also be looking at the percentage projections, looking at percentage of staff that might be going on maternity, parental, or adoption leave, for example. There's NLP, so natural language processing. This enables software to read and interpret human language. So this is what's used in CV screening, sentiment analysis of surveys, and AI assistants that answer any employee questions instantly. So it mixes things around that. Generative AI, and that creates content from prompts. So in HR, this could be used for drafting job descriptions, building material for staff induction or onboarding, and also generating role-specific interview questions in seconds. I mean, it is quite scary how this is done, but I do think you need a human eye to look over it. So there's also robotic process automation. So this handles repetitive rules-based tasks like data entry, payroll calculations, which again puts the shivers up my spine, because there's so many errors with payroll calculations that are made with humans, and leave balance updates without a human clicking through each step. And I think that's a real shame, actually. Predictive analytics, so similar to the first point I mentioned, but it might use historical data to forecast outcomes, future hiring needs, or the likely impact of a pay review. Now, how this is then going to impact on gender and ethnicity pay, I don't know. And then, of course, AI agents. So this could be, the chatbots that pop up, or it could also be used as end-to-end screening process, or tracking regulatory changes and flagging them to the compliance team. So there's a lot there, and I thank you to Employment Hero blog for listing that so succinctly. And so why are we bothering to use this? So of course there are different areas here, aren't there? There's what's perceived as why are we replacing humans? And it does worry me, because there's so many people out of work at the moment. In the UK, we've got youth unemployment at at an all-time, I think, 20 or 25-year high. This is serious. I don't know if you've been following global news, but of course, the Jantar Mantar cockroach protests in India. And this is all to do with the education minister, who's now been forced to resign from the protest. 22 million young people, primarily young people, but people from across the country, mainly in North India, though, but saying the education minister had said, oh, these people are just complaining about the exams and entrance into elite institutions and how few medical places there are, as one example, for the number of students that could and should apply. And also, I think India, every country needs more doctors. And he said, oh, they're just cockroaches and they're unemployed cockroaches and they don't know what they're doing. So this movement, it was tongue in cheek, started by someone who just come back from the US, and 22 million people. Do check it out. It's very, very fascinating to watch and look at the cultural context of how the protests are working. 22 million young people primarily, but 22 million people. I've seen elderly grandmas also, on the street talking about why they're there. So very interesting. And a lot of young people are unemployed in India because of AI, and Modi being very pro tech and pro, having his pockets filled, I think. I'm saying that I don't have evidence of that, but that's my suspicion. Anyway, so we're seeing it here. So the first point about efficiency is, the idea that AI can sift through thousands of CVs. It can look at, matching words. I just think that, again, if you know how to do the system, you know how to do the system. And it's meant to identify candidates who match job descriptions far faster than any human could. But for me, I think we should have more types of jobs and different ways of assessing it. And we should be talking to candidates over the phone, and we should be doing open days, and there just could be different ways to do that. The other plus point that people extol to me about the virtues of AI is about objectivity, which I think is nonsense. But this idea that AI can really assess very neutrally, like hiring decisions purely by focusing on data. But of course, AI has been trained by humans. Personalization, that's another thing. So it's thought that AI can tailor learning and development programs to individual employee needs. Well, I actually think having a conversation with your learning and development team does that very, very well. And then predictive analytics. So that I can see that could be really, really useful. So using AI to forecast turnover, as I said, identify high potential employees, not so sure about that one. But engage employee sentiment through natural language processing. Again, I'm not sure about that one. But I think looking at past data and predicting using AI without anyone's details, that could be useful. I can see that. So the catch for me is, as I said, these benefits assume that AI is neutral, but they're not. If humans aren't, why on earth would AI be? And so we have to focus on bias because, of course, AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on. And if that data reflects historical biases, like favoring certain demographics, we know that in hiring, promotion, who gets opportunities for training, pensions calculations, all of this, AI is going to perpetuate or even amplify those biases. And here are some examples. So using facial recognition, I don't know how widely this is used, but some companies are using AI to analyze facial expressions during video interviews. Now, this is really dangerous as well, because we know from research during the pandemic and lockdown that being on video calls all day long or for any length of time, more than an hour, is really exhausting for the human brain because we can't read body language very well when we're online. And that's one of the main reasons causes of fatigue. And articles had shown that women and global majority of people have exacerbated levels of stress and exhaustion from doing this being having endless video calls. So if AI is picking up on people's facial expressions, and they might be, your dog's barking, your cat's meowing, you've got kids running in and out, you've got people at the door, and you're feeling stressed, this is really difficult. So of course, that's going to perpetuate or pick up on the wrong signals or amplify biases. So I'm really, really not sure about this one because I think it can lead to more unfair processes. Then we've got performance evaluation. Again, tools that analyze employee performance data. This depends on the sector. And I think, of course, if you're going on billable hours, that might be easier to do. But how do you assess employee performance when you've navigated a really challenging conversation with community members and there's a new housing development? All of these sorts of things, it's going to overlook context and also systemic barriers that are faced by underrepresented groups. So I don't feel happy about this. And, are we using AI to undo biases and barriers? I feel not, or I feel like we're heading towards automating it at scale. And in an article, I can only see the abstracts, but you might have access to it because it's on emerald.com, a research site, a paper called Using AI in HR Decision Making, What HR Leaders Must Change to Avoid Bias, Blind Automation and Loss of Trust, by Maysem Karami and Reza Ghasem, published on 20th of January 2026. So this study in the abstract, so the summary is, finds that AI systems in HR frequently reproduce historical bias and are often perceived by employees as opaque, which weakens trust and perceptions of fairness. AI delivers the greatest value when positioned as decision support rather than decision authority, and when HR leaders retain visible accountability for final decisions. Now, that is great to read in a research paper. I feel like it's common sense, but it's always really good to have the research around this. Now, yes, I feel like I don't even need to visit organizations to know that really, but it has to be decision report rather than decision authority. I think that's so helpful. And the link is in the show notes. And the next thing I wanted to point your attention to is a CPD article, What Does Responsible and Effective AI Adoption Look Like in the CIPD by Haifa Modzani. And in this article, it's really comprehensive, but one of the paragraphs that really stood out for me was this: to turn AI from a technical experiment into sustained value, senior people professionals must manage the talent ecosystem rather than just the tools. The following action plan, which is in the article, provides a framework for you to become a key architect of the transition, balancing operational pace with workforce stability. These timelines are a guide, as the actual pace and actions will depend on your organization's size, range, and complexity of your AI tools and your organization's existing digital maturity. And I think that is the key, isn't it? Existing digital maturity. How have you been using it? Is it just suddenly, right, everyone use, X program or X thing? And also, all large organizations should have an environmental and corporate social responsibility strategy. And that, for me, there's definitely a Venn diagram there. Okay, so I really hope you're enjoying the content of the podcast and want to keep up to date. If you are, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you can now choose a download you would like. Just go to diverseminds.co.uk/downloads and choose the resource that works best for you. Right. Okay. So given all of that, and given that I am very biased myself about anti-AI, what can we actually do? So one of the key things, and this is going to be quite similar to the things I mentioned last week, but is about transparency. So many AI tools, again, are used for the sake of it. Oh, we've got to do this. We've got to keep up with it. And potential candidates and employees don't really know how decisions are being made or why they're being made or rejected. And I don't think that's transparent. I think that's very opaque, and it doesn't create a positive environment. So can we spell this out? Can we talk about it? How is it being used in recruitment? And also the people part of it. This is so, so important. And within that, of course, there is consent. Our employees and potential employees, candidates, delegates, giving informed consent for their data to be used in AI-driven decisions. So I think people should have the right to opt out. I don't know if some of you have been to the GP, medical GPs practices are using it, and they say, do you mind if I use it to support dictation? You have the right to ask questions how they're going to use that data, and you have the right to opt out. And I think that really does make the difference. Why are people having to put their CVs in? So many job adverts on LinkedIn. I often just have a look and see what's out there and what the mood is. And, this will be sifted by AI. I mean, I wouldn't know what to change. I wouldn't know how to create the buzzwords. So that's very difficult. Accountability again. So how can we make it really clear that who's making the decision, who's responsible? Is it the AI back end? Is it AI and some HR business partners? Is it the company? It's very, very difficult because, of course, HR at its core should be about people. And I don't think AI can understand things like emotional intelligence, any barriers, contextual data. That's really, really important. And I think these are questions that every HR team, director, head of, team members really need to talk about, because it's not simply about compliance. It's thinking about what kind of culture do we want to inculcate. And I think if candidates and employees feel like they're being judged by this opaque, ubiquitous, unaccountable system, then where is the engagement? And it does feel like we're sleepwalking into something really, really horrible. So we can't, we've tried for years to talk about bias. And I think unconscious bias can be a real mixed bag as well. But unfortunately, we know we can't flick a switch on and it be a one-time fix. But have a look at the AI systems already in place. Much like, are you using data systems effectively, or are you spying? What's going on, and how are you really analyzing them? What tools do you have in place to ensure that the staff numbers and the application numbers are not going in a discriminatory direction? I think it's also really important to adopt ethical frameworks. So there are a number. So there's the EU's guidelines on trustworthy AI. There's ethically aligned design principles. There are conversations we can have. I'm sure there are lots of companies I don't know the name of that are talking about AI, ethical AI, as ethical as it can be. I also think it's vital to create an AI charter. So this is from the CIPD article, and so it's really helpful. And this is around how you can draft people-centered AI principles. So how, as an organization, are you going to make sure there's that sort of connection, that co-production between people and the AI, and what do established frameworks look like? The OECD and UNESCO define where judgment must be human-led, specifically protecting thinking time and breaks to prevent the risk of vigilance fatigue. So when we're exhausted, making quick decisions and going to our system one. So they're just a few things. And I'm thinking that you probably have your own ideas as well. And maybe you're very pro AI and think it's been brilliant for your business. And if you have, I'd love to hear more about that, because I do think if you're using AI in your HR processes, I really encourage you to take a hard look at how it's being implemented. Are you auditing for bias? Are you being transparent with your employees? Are you keeping humans at the front and center of decision making? And if you're not using so much AI yet, I would say please don't rush into it without doing your homework. The stakes are really too high to get this wrong. So I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, I run workshops, training sessions, and keynotes for organizations all about creating positive, happy, equal workplaces, including busting things on bias and stereotype. So please get in touch with me to find out more at Layla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's show and the shows over the last 6 years. So if you have, why not leave me a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from. You can also leave me a voice note anonymously or ideally with your name at bit.ly/spkpdmp. And don't forget my TEDx talk all about my experience of balancing culture, racism and mental health in the workplace. And that link is bit.ly/TEDxWolves, WOLVESLO. And it was a labour of love. So if you enjoy it, please do comment on YouTube, share and like. And it's only 12 minutes long and something that you can watch in your break. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and join me in 2 weeks' time where I'll be talking about why ignoring your staff surveys isn't a good idea and how employee voice helps you shape a better business. Until then, take care, enjoy the sunshine, and I hope to catch you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.